Hello guys, today I would like to make a tutorial on this The Last of Us fungus inspired growth system. Right now it's just a geometry that I converted table poly to just export as an Alembic because we didn't need the actual animation of its growing, but with a little bit of work it also can be animated. So yeah, let's get started. This is our main composition. I already put the TyFlow icon in here, and these are the mushrooms that I created within the TyFlow. So I create a shape and I make it so with this mushroom it's 2 by 2 by 2, so it's 2 centimeters because 200%, and by default it's put in the scale of 1. Um, I scale, I subdivide, and I displace. The displace by vertex normal, everything quite low. Then I spawn the particle and I spread it up by 2 centimeters because we have the shape of 2 centimeters, so it should be on top. Then I scale it, I subdivide again, relax, displace, relax, and smooth. Yeah, so that's the base shape, and then we create the BDB out of this. You can play around with some filters to make it to your liking and all of that. And so yeah, I just made a few versions of this and called it a day for this tutorial. Let's begin with the actual setup. Uh, we will start with mushrooms, and I like to keep my scene organized because it's gonna get pretty messy pretty quick, and so it's pretty much required by the industry. So we spawn one particle, we place it on the icon, and we make it grow. We use the diffusion algorithm, and by default it's not doing anything because we need the timing to set on continuous. And now as you can see it's growing all over the place, which is kind of cool, but it's not really what we want it to do. So what I would like to do is to go to object and put it on and make it so that our geometry spaces actually attract this grow system. And you can see that it's kind of working, but it's not necessarily what we want because it still sticks out. It kind of tries to mimic the shape and all of that, but it's not what I really would like to do. So I'd like to bind this to the actual geometry so that we don't have anything flying around. And yeah, okay, so as you can see, now it starts looking pretty decent, I would say. Yeah, the next thing, let's bring the mushrooms that we created previously into this. Put this onto the geometry. Let's make it a little better color. Sorry about that. Pedant style. Yeah. Right now the align rotation is turned on, which means that by default it's gonna try and follow the shape that it's growing to, but we don't need this because we would really like to actually have them be rotated by the surface normals. So, oh, sorry, rotation. So you can choose random horizontal by default. Then you do the rotation, and to align to surface, you pick the same surface that we used. And yeah, well, by default, it's creating this straight mess. What you can do is you can interpolate how much of this operator is going to affect this flow. So 0.3 means 30%, and so on. I think this is looking good. The next thing that I'd like to do is to change the scale. So I'm gonna do absolute, and I'm gonna do, this is gonna be our base scale. At 20%, maybe 25, 30, yeah, 30% looks quite good. And I would like to use another scale, relative add. Relative add, it automatically changes timing to continuous, and what it does, it basically adds the value here, which is right now it's 10% each frame. So it's getting big quite fast. You can play around with the interpolation to make it slower. But yeah, I think it kind of works. What I'd like to do now is to make the grow system to work only 25 for only 25 frames, and then the scale maybe for 35 frames. Yeah, it kind of works. You can play around with the radius to make them grow more or less. Well, it depends on your overall look that you're trying to achieve. Then let's see. The scale is not enough for me, so I would like to, yeah, maybe something like this. Now, what I'd like to do is to split this, let's say, by 30% and just delete this. Now, you can immediately see that the look has changed, that because it's trying to split each time something happens here. So I would like this to be split up on the frame 35. So yeah, you can see that it's deleting only on the frame 35. And maybe let's do, yeah, maybe let's do 30%. Then I would like to do a property test. Do the scale, doesn't matter by which axis, and if it's greater than, let's turn on our data operator and search for the scale, and let's see, the biggest gets to the 2.05. Okay, so if the scale is bigger than 1.6 to 0.6, you're gonna get sent to another vent, maybe 1.5. Yeah, okay, and then you split again 60%, 70 maybe percent, and you delete those. So yeah, this is the basic idea of this. Now the next thing I'd like to do is to modify the scale a little bit. So maybe we can use the scale randomizer here and here as well. yeah, this can work. So we ended up with something like this. Okay, let's continue. What I did is I combined this floor with the walls because the reason for that is that object bind inside of TyFlow is binding the particle to one surface and trying to keep this particle on that surface all the time. So it won't really move around freely. Yeah, that's the reason. Let's do the next tie setup. Let me turn off the mushrooms. We're gonna spawn particles, 50 particles. We're gonna place them on the icon. And we're gonna bind them to our surface. Yeah, so the next thing is force, then the slow, and then the spline paths. So in object bind, make sure that it's set to face, friction is 0, slow. Let's see what we gonna get. It's looking pretty interesting, but it's, as you can see, it's just some noise, and it looks like a noise. It's just a trajectory, so we don't really need this. I'm gonna delete those splines, and the way we're gonna spawn them is by actually spawning particles by travel distance. Make sure that you send them to the new event before you change the type. Now in spawn it should be set to continuous, and inherit property is no spin, no velocity. But we do need scale because we want them to interact with each other. Yeah, so if we just put the spline path here and change the type to siblings, we're gonna get something really similar to what we have, if not the exact same. Let me just organize this a little better. Yeah, so it's pretty much the same thing. Now what I'd like to do is to bind them to each other, and I don't want them to be bind by proximity, but I do want to bind them to siblings. And then I would like them to be affected by their own physics. So we don't need a particle collision, but we do want the particle attraction. Now, as you can see, it starts to take shape more aligned with what we need. So what I would like to do is to slow them down quite a lot. Maybe put some force onto this, and the particle physics I would like to go only up to frame 35. Pretty much everything I would like to be until the frame 35, and then stop is gonna be 35 and up. So yeah, let's see. Let's see what we're gonna have. And as you can see, it started to create those interesting patterns here, which we do need, but it also creates this sort of artifacts where it's going through the surfaces. So one way to fix that is by enabling the surface force, picking our object and go to normals, face normals, and push it out. Make sure to make it face and not the face normals. It's trying to push it away and then attracts them back. So we get this in pretty interesting shape. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, every time that you want to change those, you just right click and reset all operators. Now, let's open up our mushrooms and see. Yeah, it's not quite there. Yeah, this looks much better. Let's just let's see if we can make them even more appealing. Mm, yep, that's it. So now let's create this pinky fungus. And it's actually fairly easy to create this. I just gonna rename this as fungus vines here real quick. And yeah, the way we're gonna create them is by simply copying our vines, pasting here. Sorry about that. Making the total number much smaller. Let's just see what we gonna get. So yeah, it's pretty much the same. Now what we need to do, since it ends at frame 35, we want to spawn a new particle at that frame. So timing frame 35 to 35, and we just need this to be in the new event with a grow operator set to space colonization and timing uncontinuous. Now, in order for the particles to actually grow there, we need another burst. Uh, I'm gonna set the start to the frame at 35, and I'm gonna make the count of 400,000 particles. I'm gonna position them onto our geometry. So, as you can see, it starts to eat out from those. And yeah, let me just turn off this view. But as you can see, it's not really looking any good. So let's just play around with the parameters here. I'm gonna make it something like this. I don't need to align the rotation. Maybe introduce some noise. Yeah, this should be good. Let's see what we're gonna get. Yeah, it's looking pretty decent right now, I would say. And let's say we're gonna make them stop at frame 60. So 35 to 60. Now, the problem with that is that they eat out from all of the particles in the simulation, meaning that our spline is also affected because it just deletes the particles that it sees. So we need to tell TyFlow which particle it should interact with. And you just simply create a particle group here and you place the same group in the grow operator, and just to be extra sure you can simply make another group for the binded particles. Let's see. Second group. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I deleted that. Now it should work. Yeah, and as you can see, the spline stays the same throughout the whole process. Now, as you can see, they move around. They're not stuck on the same position, and I'd like to change that. So, object bind. I'm gonna select this. I'm gonna use face. Friction 100 is okay. Let's see. Yeah, this works. Now, let's make some shape here. 3D Geo Low Res. And let's put two scales in here. One is absolute, 500%. The other one is gonna be relative first by 20% with a normal interpolation of 0.1. Let's change the display to geometry and run the simulation. See what happens. Yep, they start to look pretty good. Just turn on our vines. One curve a little less. Yep, this is the final look. Now you can always go to seeding operation, reseed all, and get completely different result. So yeah, now if we turn on all of our simulations, the next part is we're gonna spawn some more spores to make this a little bit more appealing, a little bit more complex. So I'm just gonna use the mushroom growth system. I'm gonna copy and paste it in here, and it's pretty much the same. Let me just rename this Ty Spores. Now shape, I don't need that. Let's just use the geosphere low res. Yeah, and as you can see, it's maybe like so, but I want them to grow a little bit further. So let me just delete those, and I don't need any rotation in here. Let's see 2.5. Maybe they're a little bit too big. You want 135, it should be enough. Maybe the beginning scale is pretty low. Yeah, let's just copy, paste instance, and make the crow unique. Maybe we want this to 2.2 and this to 2.7 with a different seed here. So yeah. So let's just make some little adjustments here because I need this a little bit bigger, and maybe the final result should be by 15% so that they scale down a lot more. Yeah, this looks good enough. What I did is I put the mesh operator in here, turned off the render only mode on fungus vines and TySpores, both of them. So what I'd like to do now is to blend a lot of elements together better. So I'm just gonna name this as Ty intersect. And yeah. Now let's burst intersections on frame 60 to include self-intersections. That's pretty important. We're gonna pick all of the objects that we want to spawn this. Just and then what we will need to do is to burst VDB on frame 60. Sorry. 0.5 voxel size, and particles to SDF includes these flow particles, and let's put the radius to 0.2, 0.3. So let's make this 0.5 and this 0.3. Yeah, so now if we run this, we're gonna get something like that. We just turn off the display from here. Yeah. What I would like to do now is to spawn some hairs on top of this. So just create a new Ty object, call it Ty hairs. Let's burst particles on frame 61, 20,000, position volume, position object set to volume, sorry. Then we're gonna do some force. We're gonna do surface force as well as slow operator, quite high, and spline operator, spline path by trajectories. So we're gonna set the timing to be present for only 10 frames maybe to affect this flow. And yeah, let's increase this to maybe something like this. So quite a frequent noise, go up quite a lot. Surface force is good enough, and yeah, let's see what happens. Let's put this to 0.2 and curves. Turn on the display and let's run the simulation. Yep, this looks good enough. Now, what I noticed is that something has changed with our main fungus, so I'm gonna turn off everything except for this fungus and see what's going on. So it's relative first, and let's put the timing to only up until the frame of 61, 60. Yeah. So hope you enjoyed the process. It's a fairly easy setup. There's nothing that complicated. Thank you for watching and take care.